I haven't had time to make any YouTube videos in quite a while, up to and including my monthly series on my reef tank, which, though the glass is a little bit dirty, it's still doing fine. I've been too busy working on my fish room. The construction of this rack system was really a lot harder than I thought it was going to be. I knew it wouldn't be too easy, but it was more time consuming and way more expensive than I thought. So the main system consists of 4 20-gallon longs and 4 20-gallon talls. There's a 75-gallon sump underneath, and in the future there's going to be a smaller rack over here. But for now, let's focus on this. I did kind of copy someone's design, but it wasn't exactly the same because I have 2 different size tanks. Normally I just use the rocket engineer style stand, and that's always worked for me. I'm not a very good builder, and I'm an even worse plumber. I have plumbed many reef tanks and a few tanks together, so it's not like I'm completely inexperienced. But it was a real challenge to do this. Both designing, implementing, and even cost. This is well over $1,000 in PVC parts. Well, the bulkheads too. So the last time I plumbed tanks a couple of years ago, I was paying about $15 for 10 feet of PVC. It's $32 now. And the fittings have gone up in price. And they're impossible to find. I went to a whole bunch of hardware stores. I ordered from like 3 different fish stores. And then I finally had to get the last 2 pieces from a pool supply store. It's just hard to track down all the PVC parts, and they really added up cost-wise. With that being the case, for now, I don't have any real filtration in the sump. I am planning on putting a filter roller mat in here. The filter stock just fell off, but that's what I'm using for now. I think a filter roller will be a good choice, primarily because this is a breeding system, so the fish get fed many times a day. Yeah, if I can catch the uneaten food right away, that'll be much better than having it rot out. I do want to build an algae scrubber too, and then if I need a protein skimmer, I'll get one. I have filled these empty tanks with dry rock for now, which are hopefully colonizing with bacteria, and there's a few pieces of live rock in the system and some macroalgae in the one empty tank up top. The plumbing was really tricky, and I had way more leaks than I thought I was going to. Nothing catastrophic, nothing shot water, but dripping from many of the tanks, and there's like 200 leak points on this thing. I'm embarrassed to say that I did use some silicone to seal a couple of drips, and I've got one left that I'm still working on. Where the towel is, it collects water. And deliberately, I don't have an auto top off, and I just have the water level just enough so that the return pump works. This is so I know how much water is going in and how much is actually coming out. Obviously, there is evaporation. I'm working on covering the tanks with this roofing material. But until that leak is sealed, I'm not going to put an auto top off on, just to be sure. I mean, I'm home every day anyway, so it should be fine. As far as fish go, I have a new used female ocellaris. She's probably 3 or 4 years old, and she's paired with one of my storms, who are now a little bit over 6 months. So he's definitely a mature male now. These two have been together for just 2 days, and they're already pretty well bonded. I did notice they slept in the pot together. I did also unfortunately notice this black storm, which I actually got New Year's Eve. So that's 8 months ago, meaning he's probably 14 months old. He's actually smaller than my 6-month-old storms. If you look at him real close, it's very likely he's a little bit stubby, so maybe he is defective. He's a beautiful fish though as far as pattern. He just might not make a good breeder. The Darwin still has an orange face, so she's a long ways away from being a mature female. So we'll just wait and see what happens. They're not hurting anyone by being in here. This Onyx Picasso Percula, whatever you want to call him, he's a Percula. I got him used, and he's with another one of my storms. I really like this one for the pattern on the one side where he's half orange and half white. They've been getting along great, and I would love to see some percula storms since perculas are my favorite clownfish personally. Even more exciting is this pair of snowflake ocellaris. This tank is pretty blue unfortunately, but this is a beautiful black pair. They're probably the biggest designer clownfish I've ever seen. Every once in a while I see like a 20-year-old wild ocellaris that's huge. These guys are pretty big too. And it only took them 13 days to lay a clutch of eggs. 13 days in this system. They came from an established reef tank, and I moved them 4 hours away. They were in the bag more than 6 hours. For a little while, this tank wasn't plumbed inline, just in case. Well, actually, I only left it a week because I knew the guy's tank was disease-free. We basically tore it down twice trying to catch these fish and stressed the hell out of his hippo tang and other tanks, and nobody got even a single white spot. So I know his tank is ick-free, so I was okay with adding these guys directly to the system. Normally, I will do a much more thorough quarantine. But given that they were already laying, I didn't want to keep moving them and stressing them, and it seems to have paid off in this case. The next part of the system, I'm going to wait a little bit to finish. I'm done building stuff for now, and to be honest, I'm basically out of money on this project. And I don't really need these tanks yet, but so it's going to be 4 10-gallon tanks and 5 5-gallon tanks. So the 20-gallon tanks are probably bigger than what most people would use for clownfish pairs. I just like to give them more space, and then I can use these tanks for other things. I don't want to just breed clownfish, and I can use them for grow out and other things too. And then once all this is plumbed in, it'll be very easy to, for instance, scoop these two and move them here. And also, because I didn't do the third row, because I didn't realize that once you count for the 2x4 height, if I put a third row here, it wouldn't be able to drain into the sump. I have a little bit of storage for my 55-gallon drum and random buckets, and I can get back here if I need to fix any more minor leaks and clean up the electrical, which will have to wait a little bit. Over here, I have my grow out system, which right now is just 2 tanks. I took 2 of them offline because I don't need them. These are just the last few storms I have. Thankfully, my pair is back to laying eggs. They just laid a huge clutch. It's funny, I was about to move them to the new system, but they laid more eggs in their little nano reefs, so they're going to stay in there for now. Obviously, I'm not going to move them to a whole new system when they just started laying again. Most of these guys are either sold or I'm going to use them for other projects. There are a few stragglers left. You can see I got 1 maroon in with them too. But this tank will be used for grow out, and yes, obviously I'm going to need much more grow out tanks, and they're not going to fit in this room, but that will be a future problem. As for the maroons, you can see I got quite a few left. I did trade a harem for that snowflake pair, and I have sold, I don't know, several hundred of these guys, but they produce so well, but there's just no demand for maroon clownfish, which is really a shame. They're so beautiful. Every one of them has a different pattern. So I'm probably not going to raise very many more. And then I do have my collection of defects here. These guys I use as frogfish food. They have all gill flares or other birth defects. I do try and sort my fish well. Once you're selling them, you don't want to give someone a fish that they're going to be unhappy with or that there's something wrong with. I'm a big believer in culling, and any reputable breeder will tell you the same. So the other thing I had to do was move my frag system. I have 2 frag tanks, the 50-gallon lowboy, which houses my personal harem of maroons. Some of these guys are not quite perfect, but I've had them a year and a half now, and they're happily living together with that convict tang. They do even school with him sometimes, which is pretty cool. Even though this is probably an unnecessarily high bio load in a frag system that doesn't have a skimmer. The other frag tank has my pair of breeding bangais, which we won't see unless I feed them. Actually, one of them is under the pump there. But yeah, I got way too much bombs. Usually I scrape it all and have it attached to things and bring them to a fish store. They also filter the water, so it's fine for now. It was a pain to move this, and I do unfortunately have to have a pipe going across, so I can't walk this way. That's so they're plumbed together. And moving the frag tank, it wasn't too bad, but I hate moving tanks. The one thing I will mention, you don't see any baby bangais in this video. I do still have a couple of them, but they have been real hard to get eating. I have just one on a complete frozen food diet. Almost all the other ones from 2 different parents and 4 or 5 different clutches, they all refuse to eat anything but live food. It's funny because you'll certainly see people say, oh, I got mine eating pellets right away, but then they're not selling them consistently. So I don't know, I'm not giving up on them by any means, but it really has been hard. I've gone through 12 different kinds of food, and everything from feeding them 5 times a day, 10 times a day, starving them for a few days. Nothing really seems to work, although by chance I've got one on a frozen diet and a few more that hopefully will come around. This video is quite long. I guess I went through quite a bit. Hopefully soon I will be making more videos on my reef tank, and since I currently have 3 pairs of clownfish laying eggs, there'll be more babies in the near future. This is by no means a how-to video. If you know what you're doing, you probably shook your head several times in this video. But there's really not a lot of information on marine fish rooms. Everything's freshwater, and there's just no guide on how to do this kind of stuff, so it's a lot of trial and error. And, well, it didn't come out exactly as I like. I do like that the floor is mostly dry, and the fish are mostly happy and starting to reproduce. Thanks for watching, and happy reefing, and happy breeding.